Hello, this is Lisa Lee, and welcome to this week's enrichment reading. We are confronting the angel of justice today, and I know that that's a tall order, and I wasn't planning on having that in the docket, but this was a very powerful week. And during the week, I think earlier in the week, and those of you that were in book study hangout reading, you're going to hear this again, but the way that this reading came about was I was doing what I normally do, which is like in that style of like a hall monitor, like blowing a whistle. I was pointing out all of the injustices that I see during my day, which like every 3 minutes I like find another injustice. And I was reporting these injustices to all of my guides. And if I happen to sort of like be in prayer with a deity, like I report injustices as they come up every hour on the hour. Like it's just something that I've been doing my whole life. And there's a lot to that. There's a lot why. And my guides got kind of sick at me, like sick of me, like sick at me. Okay, maybe. My guides got sick of me to the tune of just saying to me at one point or another, like, why don't you bring these things up with the angel of justice? Why don't you just do that, you know? And I previously had never thought of an angel of justice because I just thought justice is a process and it is, you never arrive at it. You're always like trying to get there. Like it never finishes. It's always an arc towards. And that's very, like I had this moment, like this almost like shockwave of a realization that like everything I know about the deity field, everything I know about deities, how much of my life has been devoted to some like justice endeavor that's a long, you know, and like, what does it all mean, right? I never thought about the angel of justice, and I never thought about the deity of justice as actually being a deity that I could interact with. But and clearly I've been interacting with this deity deeply for a really long time and had like a block up, had like walls up around my like vision and my perception around like what it meant to interact with that energy. And so when my guides were like, why don't you just ask the angel of justice? Faith in the process. Like, my guides are holding my hand right now. You know, when my guides were like, why don't you just ask the angel of justice? Like if you're gonna sit there with your hall monitor, like whistle blowing every 2 minutes, like you've noticed a new injustice to report to us and talk about how we're failing and not making the grade, and it's somebody's in charge, and then that person is failing and making it because that person over there is suffering, you know, like that. So, but my guides, my guides showed me something that was just like an enormous, like this is going to be one of the hardest readings that I ever do. And I've already done a version of this reading that I think I'm going to release in addition to this one that I'm going to call like interacting with the shadow of the angel of justice. Because what it means to confront the angel of justice is, for me at least, a really big deal. It's why I don't trust like that the world is a good place. Like, you know, you look at the world and you see all these horrible things and there's no justice. So clearly there's no justice. And if there's no justice, then whatever God the justice is fails. And that makes me feel like a 2-year-old lost in a mall of predators. That's the kind of vibe that an angel of justice that is not like showing me the bringing of the justice where I can like see it and it makes sense and it's coherent. Like, so we have beef, right? So when my guide suggested that I sit down with the angel of justice, and I sat down and said, bring it, the first thing that I see is that I'm on the shadow end of the angel of justice. So when you think about a deity, you're going to enter the deity field, you're going to enter the encounter with a deity, and it's either going to be like, it's going to be somewhere where you are. Wherever your shadow is, you're going to meet the shadow of that energy. It's like you're going to enter the archetype there. If it's really shadowy, you have a lot of work to do. If it's not shadowy, like, you know, you're like 3 steps from like a revelation and a jump and a skip into some kind of like breakthrough and, you know, elevation and awakening. But sometimes like we spend our entire lives trying to avoid certain shadows because they're so intense. And so when I sat down and realized that I am on the shadow side of the angel of justice, meaning I am facing off with the injustice. I'm not facing off with the justice. I'm looking at injustice and we're having a moment. And like, this is not a friend. And in fact, like it's not a friend. If I can tell you what this energy looks like, it's enormous. It's gigantic, the darkest dark you could possibly think of, like a obsidian kind of a sort of a darkness. Like it's the void, but it's the void in the shape of like enormous wings, and it feels like the void, and there's nothing more terrifying than like the moving, breathing down your neck void, with like its enormous, like gnarly wings. So I like sit down and like, that's what I'm looking at. Like, that's what I'm having. And like, this is who I'm going to channel this energy. Like, how can I even begin? So the first time I did this reading, the shadow, working with the shadow, it was actually a lot of fighting and a lot of what I would consider like embarrassing fighting, like the kind of part of the process of the readings that I do, like that I would never involve and any like audience in seeing. Like I wouldn't want anyone to ever see me at like my most like, you know, wimpy or hysterical or, you know, whatever it is. You know, losing my shit, you know, and you have, I think those of you who like can think back to when I was working with Hypatia, I entered at Hypatia's shadow, and like we could see that there was like anger there, and that I was working with shadowy energy. So like, this is a good lesson for everybody who like gets readings, does readings, is involved with like tarot readings. Wherever your light and shadow is like what you're doing with whatever energy you're working with too. And so just being like hyper aware of these things, you don't want to like avoid a shadow because it's going to get you, you know, but you also have to be very careful about how you approach these things. And so when we think about this angel of injustice, and we're working with the part of the reading that is not the shadow, and I'll figure out how to put these up so that like you have access to both of them. Maybe we'll get to the end of this and find out. But what it means to confront the angel of justice, or look at the angel of justice from this perspective today, this reading, is going to be to heal, to attempt to heal this relationship. When I first sat down with the angel of justice, and I saw that I was in the shadow end and I was looking at injustice, I basically had the reaction of like wanting to fight and not being able to put down the fight. And that was it, not being able to put down the fight. And I tried to put down the fight, and I'm fighting again. And I tried to put the look, and I'm fighting again, trying to put down the fight. Here's the fight again. And so like, that's kind of what it means to be in the shadow of injustice, or justice the shadow of justice is injustice. What it is to be in injustice is to be in a process where there's no winning, because that energy, when you look at it, it's a giant winged, dark, like bat menace of a fearscape, and it looks like a void that's like deep dark, right? You don't want to take that in and hold that. That is a depth of pain that has no end. It has no bottom, and it goes and it can consume you very, very quickly. And people consumed by injustice like cannot escape that feeling of the void. And it's very hard to pull somebody out of that when they're very deep, because of what we're looking at here. We're going to work on that here. So I was looking at the void, and I was seeing just how much of myself was consumed by this knowledge of of good and evil, where where evil exists and I can't tolerate it, and it exists and it's turning me into that, you know, because that's energy that I was willing to hold. And so having that moment, and like looking at that moment and being in that moment, and then finding myself stuck in a riptide of like rage and anger, and I'm like trying to have a conversation. Oh my gosh, let's try like, what's forgiveness, sublimation? Oh my, rage, you know. And so when we think about what it means to sort of try and approach this energy with this Two of Wands and the Sun, and faith in the process, is we are going to get to our enlightenment with this. Like, that's why, like, whatever happens with the first message, wherever I put that, and wherever I talk to you about what it means to work with these messages or enter these messages, the angel of injustice at the shadow is very, very harsh, and it has a cruel, like, it's not a good look. But the angel, what it means to overcome injustice, and to be able to have the wound, that void wound, be able to like heal it. You know, believe it or not, this notion of like healing something like that is building a bridge between hell and heaven. There's no two ways about it. And I don't know, I think it's the hardest thing that could exist. And so we're going to attempt this bridge today, and we're going to attempt it with the help of the angel of justice, which requires confronting the angel of justice. We got to go into the wounds that we feel are bottomless, that we can't get rid of, that every time we get in the vicinity of, rage erupts and it's eating the life, right? So I want everybody to pull up their little magical sleeves. I want you to take a really deep breath. These are heavy readings, and these are also breakthrough readings. And let's go and address the angel of justice with some grievances. And as we do so, we are going to have faith in the process. Because I think that what happened to me with the last reading was every single time I got near a tender question or a painful spot, basically when I got in the vicinity of my own wounds, I erupted in rage, right? And so when that happens, that is not the effective way of working in, you know, for catharsis. And so this is rose quartz, and I'm basically just like, God, like bringing in some energy here, because I'm in the same way that like you can see like Rocky Balboa like getting ready for a fight in the ring of it's, you know, the boxing movie. Like I'm here with the rose quartz, like trying to like, come on, love, you know what I mean? So like, I want us to sort of really think about what it means to enter some of these tender spaces, because another thing that's happening is I'm using the danger decks. I'm using some really hard decks to get into like what it means to deal with these things. So let me see how our guides want me to focus this reading, because they could want me to be like very focused about it. So where we're entering into this reading is not the hunter, not the hunted. Oh, be the hunter, not the hunted. You know, that was like interesting. I like literally read different words and it like flipped on me. Be the hunter, not the hunted. Not the hunter, not the hunted is what I got. And when I feel it, it definitely is like vibes of not the hunter, not the hunted. Not the hunter, that's like the key. So even though the words are different than the ones that are written on this card, the way that I saw them is the way that we're going to work with them. Not the hunter, not the hunted. That's the way out of the labyrinth that is the entrance to the void. Once you get into the void, it's really something else to try and pull yourself out of there. And once you've encountered the void, you know, the opportunity in healing is really big. So let's kind of talk about, look at this. See this card? The Two of Wands? And it's also a path. And so the Two of Wands speaks of like planning ahead, a path. You're getting ready to like move out on this journey, and you're making this plan with the Two of Wands. The inspiration is there. You're working it out. You're looking out, working it out. It's like stepping on a path, planning for going on a journey, planning for a path. And like, who's our leader here? But of like the actual depiction. Now the angel of justice and justice that I'm seeing is a very terrifying horror movie version of this. But I like that this is the cartoon, and this is why we're with the cartoon deck, because it's the angel of justice. Even though the angel of justice knows I'm entering at the shadow, which means I can barely even look at it. I can barely even like stomach this. There's still a sweetness here. There's still a kindness here. There's still a love. And I think that that's where we enter into this prayer about faith in the process, is that whatever it is that we have to encounter during our lifespans, and what it means to sort of have to entangle with some of these archetypes and the stories that they bring and the lessons that they bring, and sometimes like it can be incomprehensibly like painful, and the suffering can just like lead to rage. And so when we have faith in this process, we have faith that whatever we're encountering, like we have what it takes, and we have the love backing us, and that rose quartz sort of energy backing us, that's going to get us through the Six of Pentacles and the Queen of Pentacles in reverse, and the Nine of Swords in reverse. So I am working with reversals today. I might be working with them for a little while. I started doing that, and like once I get in the habit of something, it starts to come back and I start to do it. So this whole section here is about unfairness, like very, very severe unfairness, like weird, like gnarly trauma around give and take. There's like a slavery energy here with this deck. There's like there's the enslaved and the enslavers. A lack of reciprocity. Okay, so we're talking about injustice. Bottom of the deck energy is going to be the Ten of Cups in reverse. So these are very, very hard energies. Let me take a minute. Let me take some water. Let me get more clarifying cards. The Blasted Tower. So underneath the Ten of Cups in reverse, we've got the Tower here being about not ever having a foundation to stand on. And the lack of ever having a foundation to stand on translated to a loss of all happiness. And like, this is a really unfair position. I was shuffling the decks, and I was, looking at this Angel of Injustice, like shapeshift between like the dark void and basically the Kingdom of Heaven. Like if like both things had an infinite, like if you looked into like the space of them, like the void, it goes like infinitely. If you looked into the space of this ascended and like aspect of justice, like actual justice, like justice as a rival almost. It's the same kind of like infinite depth of field, but like with a type of like majestic and holy of holies power. And so I was seeing this thing like shapeshift as I was shuffling. And so I lost my train of thought because that was a whole experience. And it kind of just like, just even sort of remembering what that looked like, and felt like, and at one point I was trying to like see if I could dial into sort of the light bright, and I kind of hit against the shadow again, and I heard a scream come through the void, and it was, why did I get nothing, right? But it wasn't like that. I was like, why did I, like you think of horrifying screams, like from that void I heard, why did I get nothing? Why did I get nothing? And so this is this right here, this whole, like this aspect of the void, why did I get nothing, is right here. And when you think about the shadow aspect of the Angel of Justice, you're talking about the accuser. And the accuser is going to be some like the one who sits in the position of judgment. And let's get some more cards. Let's get some more cards, because I'm in some rough territory. I'm trying really hard to stay with the like the lighter version, and I'm very affected by that void, I'll tell you that much. And I think a lot of us are, because this is a really painful reality for a lot of people. And part of what when I was talking to the Angel of Justice, the first reading, and we'll talk about when I'm going to put that up. I'll talk to my guides about it. I have to stop interrupting the channel to think about how I'm going to do that. But I kept on seeing the children in the mines mining for the material that makes the iPhone. So the phone that is recording this reading right now, I'm looking at this Angel of Justice, and it's an injustice, and I'm having a hard time trying to channel or listen without losing my shit. And I keep looking at the phone, and because I'm in this energy, I'm seeing the children in the mines, and I'm seeing like sickness at a level that I can smell it. And so in that reading, there was a couple of times where I basically thought there's no such thing as deserve anything. Nobody deserves a thing. And that's something that we've gone over before. But why did I get nothing? Whether or not you got nothing, or that there are others that got nothing, the reality of getting nothing is a feature of injustice that makes injustice more prominent than justice, because it exists. It exists as a problem, and it seems like a God that we cannot overcome. And it is a wound to know that such an energy is with us, amongst us, and we could step into the reality of someone who got nothing. At any moment, we can be experiencing that ourselves, if we're not experiencing it ourselves anyway. You know what I mean? If we're not already there. And to have that experience of really looking at your life honestly, really looking at your wounds honestly, absolutely taking account of the things that were horrible that happened to you, and really just facing that, then we have the reality of, if not why did I get nothing for you, why did I get nothing for someone else? And it's the same horrible, because the presence of such a thing means it's possible for you, which means it exists as a menacing threat for you. And so all injustice is injustice for everyone, because it exists. We tolerate its presence. in one way or another, we're tolerating its presence. A lot of us hold it, and to encounter the void is in, and I think Man's Search for Meaning, because I see Viktor Frankl right now. so that is a book, and we should book study that. That's a good one. I'm struggling with book study right now, so like I think I'm gonna be like wibbly wobbly with it until I find something really good. But Man's Search for Meaning, there's this part that I'm seeing with Victor's energy, where there's a field. It's in the book, I'm seeing it's in the book. Like, there's two people who have survived the Holocaust. One person who survived the Holocaust has entered the void, and everything is meaningless. And because everything is meaningless, they're gonna steal because they're hungry, and everything is meaningless anyway. So like, who cares like who they hurt? It's meaningless. Everything is hurt. Everything is horrible. There is no fairness. There is no deserving things. There's nothing that you can do to get the right stuff. And there's nothing that, look at that horrible person getting all of this, and like that angel getting nothing. Like, there is nothing but meaningless, nihilistic void. If that becomes who you are because you've touched it, if that consumes you, then you go to a place where there is no justice, and you exist in a place where there is no justice, and you operate in a place where there is no justice, and you speak from a place where there is no justice, and you cannot conceive of justice because you're not in a dimension where it exists as a reality. What exists as a reality in the form of like what it was or what it is or how it like is a whole is injustice. So if all you're existing with is injustice, there's some participation there. And it's a stronghold that is over every single one of us. Because every single one of us that participates in a reality where we are aware of a 4-year-old gasping for air under a pile of rubble that some rich man dropped. To be aware of that, to touch that, to feel that, to know that, is to have an encounter where you could become the void. But to not be in that place and in that space and in that awareness is to fail to reach your hand down into the rubble and work on whatever it means to pull that child out. On a spiritual level, that's what we're talking about. And so that's a very strange position to find ourselves in as humanity, where in order to save someone, we risk being swallowed by the void. And I think that for me, I have to bring myself into this reading enough. And it's funny because I found a reading in drafts that I posted on Patreon. I think I posted on YouTube also, where I didn't post it because I usually separate myself like quite intentionally from the readings. And if I put myself in, it's pretty damn obvious, you know what I mean? And I don't like the ones that I'm in because it means I'm in the shadow. It means I'm slipping up. It means I'm like losing something, and I have to, and my shit is coming through. And since we're all part of the same collective, no harm in it. But the bottom line is, this is a reading that my shit is going to come through because I can't look at the angel of, I'm with the angel of injustice. I have been touched by the void. I'm finding my way out of the void by encountering this energy with all of you. I suspect that there are others of you that inadvertently did not know that you carried the void, because the void is the accuser. The void is the accuser, which looks like this big, like terrifying, terrifying beast of winged void. And how it manifests in my day-to-day, hour-by-hour existence is like the void takes the form of that little hall monitor with a whistle. And every single time I see an injustice, I blow it really loud and I point and I scream at the gods and I say, like, you are not gods. That is God. Do it all day long. I do it all every single time I see like a vision of someone like, who is suffering at a level that I can't help with. And I feel that powerless come in. I blow that whistle and I point. And this has me operating at the shadow. And even if that sounds like a good white hat thing to do, like it's being consumed by the void instead of participating in what it means to heal the world. Because the whistleblower is just whistleblowing. I can't stop that person. I'm not more powerful than that dictator, and so there must be no God. And like this is something that's just like actually a grand deception in some ways. But as we move through into this like faith in the process, and we sit here looking at this right here, which is, why did I get nothing? We have to look at the fact that like when we are attending to these deep wounds, when we've touched evil, when we've encountered the assault of evil in one way or another, because we can call I got nothing unfairness. Like that's a injustice, you know, like why would someone get nothing? But someone getting nothing is a reality, is a lived reality of so many. And we disgrace them when we don't spend time looking at what it means to really look at the ills of the world that we're in and what we are capable of committing crimes against humanity because we're a consensus creature. The health of the whole operates by consensus. And so whatever body we are a part of is not incoherence. And that's a scary thing to think about when you think about wanting there to be a God, wanting there to be justice, wanting there to be hope, to be stuck in the process of an evolution that is like the rings of a tree expanding through time, moving towards its enlightenment with every expansion. Like inside that hole are the darkest of shadows, but also the lightest of enlightenments. Both things exist in there. And they exist in there by consensus of the whole. And the same can be said about a body. Like, I know that my body, I'm not a perfect God to my body at all, because I have a regimen of mold removal tactics that I ignore half the time. So the body that we're in, the God that we're in, we enter the shadow or the light because it exists beyond time, and we exist beyond time. And the place and time where we are is existing with dimensions that are timeless. And so and that's a lot to sort of wrap our heads around. But when it comes to sublimating the I got nothing or why did I get nothing, it's important to realize what a tiny little dot of space-time we really do take up in the course of a lifespan. Like when I say it's a sneeze, I mean like it's a sneeze. It's less than a sneeze. So the way out of why did I get nothing is to understand that you got life, you got existence, you got consciousness, and this is a period of time in the womb. It's not your whole shit. It's never going to be that. And that's faith. That's have faith in the process. That's have faith in the place where you are. Because I had a vision dream of what it means to go through the womb. And I can tell you right now that there's nothing crueler than the warm womb that then tortures you and rips you apart by forcing you to squeeze into the most uncomfortable hellscape of a misery, and then it spits you into a cold, terrifying reality, and it's all pain and it's all suffering. That's birth. And so there's this faith in the faith in the process. You know, when we actually look at the horrors, there are horrors. The void of injustice is some horror that exists within the whole that we have to contend with, and we actually can't kill it. We can be a part of what transforms it. We are a part of what transforms it. We hold its energy or we release its energy. We participate either in the aspect of justice or the aspect of injustice with what we're bringing into the world with us. I, in reading number 1, I'll call it that, was blowing the whistle at every injustice, unable to forgive, unable to put it down, unable to cope with unfairness, not because it exists in the this is where my guides did a gotcha moment with me. When they were talking to me about, this is hard reading. The reason I dropped the channel is because I'm having the gotcha. I'm gonna get it back. Yeah, it's hard for me. This is hard for me. I have to bring myself in. So when I talk about the gotcha, I got to bring myself in, and I hate doing that. You know, I really there's a way of disconnecting from myself that in trance work that I actually enjoy, but the power is when I connect with myself, which is what my guides have been urging me to do more and more and more these days. But when I was blowing the whistle and I was blowing the whistle and I was blowing the whistle and I got to the end of the reading and I was like, I'm not posting that. All I do is blow the whistle at injustice and tell him, I see you. I'm going to describe the void. And then I was saying look at the children in the mines and this and that, and I was making a whole diorama like I do with my guides, where I just list and I go for every aspect of my life where I experienced injustice. I start with the list and I bring it out again, you know. And I was having that freak out where I'm I'm not going to post this. I can't deal with this. Why am I in the shadow of this energy? Why am I carrying this void? This is going to consume me. This is a black hole energy. It's one of the terrors exists as one of the terrors. And to encounter one of the terrors, that like you have to be at a level of magic that is like, I just basically felt powerless. And so my guides were saying, they were trying to help me fight my way forward. They were trying to help me get to the other side. They were trying to help me build this bridge. And they were saying, well, where are you in this story? Like, find yourself in the story. You have to find yourself in the story. They're like, you're describing the panoramic view of everywhere where injustice exists outside of you. Where does injustice exist inside of you? And it existed inside of me in two places. One place where I was blowing a whistle and I was acting as the accuser. Then I was participating in like the sound within the void. And the other one was the hurt and the wound that caused that encounter. That was my personal experience with injustice, and how big that experience with injustice was, how painful that experience with injustice was, and how close I came to succumbing to like an injustice that would have taken my life. That injustice actually threatened my life, like viscerally, for a very long period of time. And there are a lot of people who experience injustice that is threatening them for a very long period of time. A good example is sickness. People who live their entire life trying to battle for that life when everybody else seems to be given it freely. In one way or another, that's kind of like where the picture distills down to. Like, this isn't about crime or punishment or deserve or not deserve. When we encounter and we enter into the angel of injustice or the angel of justice, same thing, where if you're on the shadow or the light. When you enter into the angel of injustice, you're accusing. When you enter into the angel of justice, you are crying. You are hurting. Your wounds are laid bare. It's a place of helplessness. But it's also a place of healing. And you can't enter justice with bravado. You can't enter justice throwing the sword. And you can't enter justice like we think we can enter justice with a victory, but we're absolutely wrong about that. And that's where people get caught up, and where the war god of this world's worldview has its stronghold is in this notion that you can arrive at justice through victory. That's the biggest lie that exists ever. That's not the route to justice. That's not how we get to justice. We do not get to justice by victory and conquering, because victory entails a struggle where one party wins over the other, a conquering. Justice does not live there. And you can get caught in the riptide of injustice if you're waiting on a victory your entire life in one way or another. If you're waiting on a perfect healing even. And I know that that's hard to hear, but if we're really going to look at this, and we have to, because we have to know what it means to have the power to overcome that darkness. We do have the power to overcome that void. The power to overcome that void does not mean in eradicating it from the whole. That's impossible. It's about transforming it through our own transformation. And the power that we have over the void, the fight that we can win with the void, is bringing in meaning and walking with that meaning on water. It's a very strange thing, and we're going to get to it because I'm going to pull some more cards. So each one of these decks that I'm using is a deck where I have a beef with the deck. So like every once in a while, I will be in a situation where I need to use a deck to get clarity on something spooky, scary, horrible, or something that, or I'm working with a guide on something that really hurt me, or I'm in the middle of like an excruciating event. And what happens if I use those decks during an excruciating event or a traumatic event or something intense, I will then take those decks that I used and I will put them away in a box where I never use them again, because even though I can clear my decks, there's something that happens with like a tragedy that like if you're using a deck during a tragedy, like it will hold that energy and that story will be in it. It's just something that, and of course you can clear anything. And especially if you've been gifted things, like you can clear anything. But if it's you and it's a situation, that memory of the situation and the deck, that's always going to be a quantum entanglement when you pick it up. And so that's why I tend to put decks away that I have used during things that have hurt me or things that were super hard. And my guides had me take those decks out and use them today. So this deck and this deck, these are pain decks. And the interesting thing about these pain decks here is the cards that are coming out. You know, so that really spoke to this notion of, wow. So this is the why did I get nothing, which is like a major imbalance. This is the Six of Pentacles, which is about reciprocity. We also have the Six of Pentacles here. The Empress and the Emperor speak of a balance between a divine masculine and divine feminine energy, a receiving and a giving. And this Temperance card on the bottom of the deck also speaks of balance and the angel of balance. And so when we talk about the angel of justice, we are talking about the angel of balance. So the first thing that we want to look at when we look at this is the presence of injustice indicates a major imbalance, like a horrific imbalance. Somebody gets everything, somebody gets nothing. It has nothing to do with whether or not they deserve the damn stuff that they have or the opportunities or anything about their life. Someone spends their life in an iron lung, and somebody spends their life as a triathlon winner, and they're both the same soul. In one way or another, they're equal in value spiritually, and they're equal in value in terms of the right and the birthright to have and experience adoration and love and all of the aspects of the divine that are positive, beautiful, enriching, like good feeling experiences. If you spend your whole life in an iron lung, and that's a reality, that is a reality. Like if you've never, like when you start crossing spirits and you have to encounter some of the stuff that people have encountered that they can't cross because they're tied to it. They're tied to the void, they're tied to the injustice. They can't let go of it because they think that if they let go of it, they're abandoning the part of their self that had to live through it. And that's the love for that self that is the love that's in it. And that love is a very powerful binding agent. And so when I look at this Emperor and the Empress and the Six of Pentacles, like I did a reading a really long time ago where I saw this vision about a ritual, like an ancient ritual, where like the sacrifice was this couple and they were killed in the middle. It was like a sacrifice. So ancient times, fire, you know, the whole thing. And there was a sacrifice of a young woman and a young man in the middle of the act. And it was the most horrifying thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And that particular vision and whatever it is that I was picking up on was like, our guides were showing me like a place where a distortion had entered between that experience and the experience of, like, this is where the void will enter into experience, and it will create a shadow or a need for healing in a place where, like, our guys are basically saying that, like, when a horrible crime occurs, that is a place where the void enters in, and that's a fissure, and that's a crack, and that's now a place that needs healing. And it's a wound. The void is a wound, and there's like no way around it. And so when we understand that the void is a wound, and like where that wound enters is now a place that needs healing, the process of that healing is the expansion of the soul. And so suffering actually, in a way that we don't even want to admit, has a purpose in the evolution, because every single time you hit a plateau, you're the best, you're the most amazing, you're the impressive, look at you, like a pinnacle of all things, like you made it, you're like 100% like the best everything, right? Every single time you reach even like a perimeter that like sounds like that, something comes in to humble you, to wreck your life. And so where that wound is, now you have to go through a dark night of the soul. Now you have to have a death experience, which necessitates a rebirth experience. And the person who you become was not the person who is the impressive, most fabulous. And it's also not the person who got leveled to the ground. It's the person who moved through both of those things and arrived at a new place as a birth. And so there is a necessity to these wounds. But the problem that we're seeing is like that those wounds can become deadly at a certain point when it comes to inflicting violence on yourself, and humanity inflicts violence on itself. At a certain point, there's a tipping point where it's going to be either you learn how to patch these wounds up in ourselves and in others, or we all succumb in one way or another, because that void gets bigger than what that void looks like when it's healed. And that's a strange thing. And the void is a black hole. I'll be honest with you. I keep on looking at this and I'm like, holy shit. Like, how do you, like, if it's not fairness, and I guess this is why we're fighting, we're confronting this angel. And I'll bring I don't have the anger energy, but if it's not fairness, if it's not a matter of, if you're a good person, you get good things. If justice doesn't look like what we think of as fairness, if we think fairness and justice are the same thing, they're two different things. Fairness is something to do with balance, and an imbalance of power is a wound, and it necessitates bringing balance. And so we have this massive wound around all imbalance of power within ourselves and outside of ourselves. Requires healing. If we are bringing vengeance, we are bringing the opposite of healing. If we are bringing vengeance, we're hurting ourselves. If we are bringing forgiveness, we're healing ourselves. That is it. That's all. There's almost nothing else. And that's the hardest. How do you forgive? How do you forgive a system, an impersonal system of living life that puts you through the experience of unfairness at a level that is one person who has to live their life in an iron lung, and somebody else gets to be a triathlon winner 3 times in a row? What the heck is that? That's the void. Just like settling on that's the way it is the void. Settling on there is no fairness, there's nothing that you can do to better your circumstance. You're stuck with what you've been given, and what you've been given is crappy, and eat it. Eat the bowl. Eat the bowl of poison. That's for you. Like, that makes us angry. That makes us angry when we're at the heart of that. And so, when I think about my personal injustice, yeah, we all have a personal injustice. The first thing that we do when we get near that pain point is diagnose the world. The first thing we do when we get near our wounds, where we have been treated with injustice and there was nothing we could do and somebody hurt us and they got away with it, it's usually some story around that. And that helplessness, that encounter with the void, that encounter with our own lack of an ability to overcome somebody else's cruelty, that fatal blow of having your life threatened, like someone can take your life. Like all the murder victims, you know who I have to cross all the fucking time? Every time. I don't cross ghosts anymore, but the ones that I had to cross, like with frightening regularity, so much so that I would look at my guides and be like, am I going to die this way? You know what I mean? Like, is this something that I need to be aware of? Because the pattern is patterning. And the Empress here. But with the, and the Emperor. See, this is really interesting. We've got, like, somebody has to sit down and go to Google and look up probability with tarot cards, because we have the Emperor and the Empress here, and we've got the Emperor and the Empress here. The giving and the receiving here is somehow at the heart of this. This union of parts of self is somehow at the heart of this. This owl here, be not the hunter, be not the hunted. If we are going to look at the shadow for real, if we are really, really, truly going to stare into that void, one of the first things that we're going to see is that there's the shadow and there's the light and there's the spectrum between, and that's the journey, and it's a kaleidoscope, and it's really beautiful, and the shadow creates the definition, and it's all an expansion process of the whole. But at the far, 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 far reaches of shadow, where the void is bottomless. And the void is bottomless because we live in an infinite expanding, we are expanding. And there's no end to that expansion. That's what infinite means. But the farther you go into shadow, the more you're going to find where there is nothing but like the evilest, like the extremes of evil and the extremes of good. When you're not in the kaleidoscope where there's definition, you're in one of the two extremes. And the two extremes are the two places where there is the least definition. Meaning, if you are all in shadow, you are not there. That is something else. And if you are all in light, that's not you either. If you're all in light, you're part of the deity field, you're of the God substance. And that's not you. That's an aspect of God that you are a part of and that you work with and through and you consider yourself one with. And so you're losing identity at that all the way extreme, no definition, good, white, light, love, right? We go all the way to the shadow. You don't exist anymore. You are just your consciousness, your mind, your experience is the only thing that is left of you, and you are embodying some aspect of evil. But the soul has already departed, like that is gone. And you know, when you meet people, when you see somebody who's a mass murderer, that's somebody who is at the extreme in a shadow, and they are no longer there. They are not. They are the void, and they are the void operating to expand itself at that point. And so there's no definition of self. That is just pure darkness, and that is just pure light. And every aspect of what it means to exist in consciousness in one way or another is to exist in this spectrum between the two, and the definition that results in that spectrum, the shapes, the forms, and the shape shifting and the moving. And there's always a movement and a dance from one end to the other. And in fact, because we are like rings of a tree that expand outwards, we do this life over and over again, all the lives over and over again. And each time we get better and holier and closer to what it means to evolve. And we don't even know what the evolving of the whole is, and we're not meant to conceive of that. But forgiveness is a process of sublimation. We have to sublimate the crime to the greater truth of a reality that sets us free, or we cannot tolerate the crime. And so we actually need that story, we need that mechanism, we need that movement. And when we really look into the void and we see and I am down with using divine masculine, divine feminine terminology, because it's in the same way that I just explained, like the spectrum and definition, and like extremes tell us things. Extremes are something that we embody aspects of and move between and through and around. But the extremes are something that we have to look at. We have to be in a relationship with, because it's part of the palette, right? And so when we think about this divine feminine, the Empress, divine masculine, the Emperor, and in the absolute light attribute, this is a union of love making, creating new life, right? If we look all the way down the barrel of that shadow, we're going to see the opposite, and we're going to see a power imbalance, and we're going to see a slavery, and we're going to see grape. I don't know why I can't say the word. I think it's like, I just don't want the censors to like pick it up. But there's two pictures. One is the worst crime, and violent. Go all the way to the extreme. One is eating the other. I want you to see it as not just a violent grape, but then it's a cannibalism on top of that. And the person's still alive and screaming. Like that, because basically if you've ever... The honest truth is, and I'm going to say this for those of us who have experienced what I'm talking about when we talk about this. One of the hardest things to get over if you've been on the receiving end of touching that particular darkness, and there are many of us who have had the experience of grape, and I can't even say the word, right? It is the experience of being consumed while you're alive by a predator. So when you watch the nature movie and you think about the gazelle and the lion and what that gazelle is feeling like, that is the exact same feeling. And so I'm not trying to trigger anybody. I'm saying that because you can heal. And we are told that we can't heal, and we don't heal because we're not able to get close enough to actually name the fucking demon, which is what we have to do in order to begin to find a philosophy of good and evil that allows us to sublimate it and then step into forgiveness. So when we're able to actually like get into the void and name the thing and bring meaning to it, there's two Holocaust survivors. One, everything's meaningless. The other has the ability to make meaning of anything. One is the bringer of life and one is the bringer of death. One can heal and the other is going to expand harm. But both people, they both had to go through the Holocaust. They were both innocent people dragged into the same torture. We have to look at that. Because if we keep on insisting that justice is about fairness, this is one of these like little tricks, one of these little things, you know, that can keep us trying constantly to demand for some sort of vengeance to bring that retribution, because it's hard. Let's get into it, because I'm like, ugh, how are you doing? Like, we're okay on time. I'm gonna let this be long. Listen, if we're gonna have to confront the angel of justice, like, we can let it take a little bit of time. Be not the hunter and not the hunted. The hunter and the hunted. That's the shadow end of, and here's why this is important to look at this. Because what breaks when you have encountered that reality in shadow, you got to break the spell over you. And when you can see it on a spiritual level as a vision, you're able to kind of see how like human nature and nature and the extremes of good and evil, and like what it means to sort of encounter what that philosophy does, like how you bring it, like it's you take the elements and you point it at that damn thing and you begin to disempower it. Because if we can't even get near these things, we're doomed. Long term, as a whole, as a one. Because that wound is going to get really infected and it's going to start festering and it's going to get bigger, and then it's going to become the experience of the whole. That's the nature here. And why am I bringing that particular example in? Because that particular experience will break your giving and your receiving. Because receiving is a sacred, holy, beautiful experience done right. Is it not? If it's the shadow, it's not like a life-producing, like, spiritual ecstasy. That's holiness, right? That's the holy of holies. If it's in shadow, it's an experience of losing that sense that your boundaries will keep you safe and that you can be safe in the world. It is losing that sense of safety when something can eat your life. That knowledge, touching that knowledge, now the void exists in that space. That's where, like, I'm losing this because I can't handle looking at this stuff. Like, this is so hard for me because I have to move through this myself. I'm just gonna keep on like coming back at it. With the sun here being about clarity and like looking at this clearly, because I lost the channel in the middle of trying to bring something like that was, I think, really important through. So I'm going to dance around this a little bit. Like, that's the problem with the level of pain associated with these wounds, is that when we begin to touch them, okay, so my guide is saying, like, come back. The feeling, like, what, like, to the knowledge of good and evil. Before you have experienced this imbalance of power, you do not know, oh, I can't get near it. I keep losing it. Oh my God. I'm looking at my guides like looking at them like, are you serious? you seriously want me to help? Like, how can I get near this? I keep on dropping out. Because I'm looking at the shifting of the angel of justice, and this particular vantage point is like, it's hard. I start to see a vision, and then I see like the points of it, and I kind of lose myself. So this notion of receiving and giving, breaking your receiver, I get that. Where am I going? Because the guide is saying the knowledge of good and evil, the knowledge of that experience, even if that experience ends, the knowledge of that experience, it changes your belief. Like, it changes your belief in the safety of the world and the safety of all of it. And I can't get near it. I can't. All right, I need help. I'm calling in our guides to bring some cards out to sort of get me there. I'm losing it because it's important and I can't. I'm going to take some faith in the process. 2 of Wands. We're being led. We're safe. We are safe. I wish, I'm glad you can't see what I'm looking at. The authentic you, communication. Okay. Soothing, empathy, and empathy in reverse. The sanctity of the body, the sanctity of the soul, the sanctity of your sovereignty. That's a knowledge that you can lose, that you can have an opposite experience of. And once you carry that truth within you, you have to defend yourself from that day on. Like it's the happy, the authentic you. Think about this, what's so beautiful about, oh man, this is so hard. You know, somebody who has never been hurt, bounding through the room, like with all the confidence in the world, and that's privilege, you know? When we're talking about deserve and not deserve, like it doesn't really work, but if we want to kind of understand what the problem of the encounter with the void actually ends up being, is it's an encounter with the part of the hole that you are trapped in that would do that, would allow for that, would let that be a part of that is a part of our experience. I think I'm going to turn this on and come right back. I have to take a break and come back. This is actually hard. When we run from ourselves, we become the accuser. When we run from ourselves, like when we run from these wounds, when we run from this pain, it has a power that we want to work on disempowering. And so when we think of the happiest young happy person, hasn't encountered horrible things yet, doesn't know the reality of what it means to be hurt, has to encounter hurt, and now suddenly hurt is a part of reality that can't be escaped, and you have to operate with a defense. And so the moment we have a power over, power under, from the smallest, tiniest infraction of power over, power under, that's going to be lies and manipulation, to the most extreme, and that's going to be somebody eating another person and eating their life and eating their potential and eating, and that's that. And so the reason that this is so hard is because it's real, that you can find yourself anywhere on the spectrum of experience, and to face that and to know that is either to be consumed by it and destroyed by it, or to develop tools for emancipating yourself from it, and that tools that you use to emancipate yourself from an experience that you are defending yourself against for the rest of your life until you're somehow able to transform it. We have to transform it. That's where we are right now. This is the hardest territory. I don't know why I can't just do readings about twin flame Kyle coming back. Like, I don't know why I do this to us. I really don't. Because I really do want to heal us. You know, I really do want to get us to a place where we are able to look at the reality of the darkest reaches of the shadow. And we're able to touch that reality. And then we're able to say, like, no, you don't. No, you don't. You're not going to take me. I'm going to see you. I'm going to say what it is. I'm going to have an understanding of what I'm looking at. And then I'm going to bring love in, and I'm going to bring forgiveness in, and I'm going to find a way with the power that is my consciousness and everything I have at my disposal to sublimate the reality of my hardship into the truth of my healing and my growth. And that is where you have power. And that's where you have power all the time. You might be with a story or in a story where there is sickness. You might be in a story where there is domestic violence. You might be in a story where there is global violence. I mean, if you're in a war zone, you know, these are stories of grave injustice in the sense that this is not fair. This person doesn't deserve that, and that person doesn't deserve that. You know what the worst sin that you can possibly commit in the eyes of the gods is? Let's find out. Because I'm, you know, when we think about vengeance, when we think about injustice, we do need some sense of a greater justice. And I was watching that new press secretary speak, and somebody had asked about the prisoners that they were taking to Guantanamo Bay, Gitmo. Now, that place is the pit of, that is hell. Okay, that's hell. Gitmo is hell. The reason that it's hell is because the energy that lives there is the void, and the void lives there as a stronghold because there is no hope in there, because there was no due process. If you were sent to Gitmo, there was no due process. You didn't get a trial. They could pick you up off the street and they could say that you are a terrorist, right? They can pick you up off the street and they can say, we know this, we saw these phone records, and we're taking you and we're putting you there. So that is a place in the middle of nowhere where once you're put there, there's no hope of release. There's no hope of going to court and saying like, no, they were wrong. Those phone records weren't mine. That's the guy who lives upstairs. Like whoever was doing that work was sloppy. They misplaced this. This is the wrong page, placed in the wrong place. And I want to go home. I have a family. I was born here. I don't know what you're talking about. This is a mistake. There is no hope that you will be released from that place, because that place exists where there is a legal disposition for absolutely no due process whatsoever. And that's I know that from like 10, 15 years ago. I'm sure it still exists that way. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But the point is, the void lives there. And the void lives there because once people find themselves facing down a life of unfairness where they should not be there, and it's a piece of paper that someone misfiled, and there's no hope of relief, and they have no way of even leaving that prison. They're not even going to another country from that place. Nothing gets processed out of there. And so I was watching, I know that, right? Everybody who knows that. And I'm watching this press secretary, and I'm watching her prattle on with the lips that I want to punch in the face. I hate this face. And I'm watching her be like, well, if you break the law in our country, if you break the law and you come here illegally, then you're not going to summer camp. You're going to jail. You're going to prison. It's not going to be fun. So if you were cold and shackled and you didn't get any water, well, that's prison. And then I looked at the comments hoping for some redemption in humanity, where someone would say something to the effect of like, are you fucking kidding me? Like you of all people are well aware of what that place is and what that place does. And so I'm looking for redemption in the comments, and I'm not seeing them. And the reason why we don't torture anybody like that is because nobody's perfect. And even if that place had the worst criminals in the world, say they had 2,000 of the worst criminals in the world, because we have human fallibility, and 1 or 2 of those people probably are innocent, could be innocent. It's a possibility. It exists on the spectrum of it can be. That's why we need due process. That's why that's there. And that's all imperfect, because our system of justice is a system of injustice. It's a void. To go near it is to know that. And so when we start to sort of think about what it means to encounter the void's name, its name is imbalance of power. That is the name of the void. Once we can name the void, we can begin to transform it with meaning. We know who you are, void. We know who the angel of injustice is. His name is imbalance of power. So that's where the crack of light shines in. And that light has the power to push us to a place where that whole situation can be transformed. Because when that crack of light gets in, when the light gets in, we begin to see what's in the shadows. And once we see what's in the shadows, once we can name what's in the shadows, then consciousness and the power of consciousness and the alchemy of what we can bring in consensus, we can defeat the shadow. We can defeat the void. We do not have to be consumed by it. That is a choice. It's a choice we make in our lives too. To touch the void is to encounter true evil. To never be able to leave that knowledge behind and to let it grow and grow and grow and grow and grow until your only experience is defending yourself from it. That's a power imbalance between the part of yourself that is powerful enough to overcome and the part of yourself that feels helpless. And we can feel helpless and be helpless to a story or a circumstance. We can be helpless to a sickness that is taking our life and taking our body. But that process can be transformed by what we believe about it and what we believe about the experience that we're moving through. We can take control over that story. It can be a story where you are being consumed by the void, or it can be a story where you are bringing meaning to the experience and expanding past some knowledge of good and evil, where something can take your life, nothing can take your life. You're infinite. Once you're here, you're here. You were once in the womb, and then you were in the world. This is a blink, and it's a blink that a lot of people beg. They beg the universe to take them out. And that's not saying that this is right. It's not saying that anyone should want that. But when we talk about looking at the void and diagnosing the unfairness that is visiting us, we're going to be, that process of diagnosis is also a process of comparison. That process of diagnosis is also a process of comparison. Imbalance of power, comparison. Now we're participating in imbalance of power because we're participating in comparison. Comparison is sneaky, isn't it? We think of that as just being kind of a mild thing. But it's on the spectrum of injustice. Because you can't compare two human beings. You can't compare two sentient forms. You can't compare two aspects of God. It's all God. And so when we understand like what's going on here, the void is all powerful until we realize, no, the void is not all powerful. Our belief in the void being all powerful is what makes it all powerful. But when we remove our belief from the void that it is all powerful, when we remove our belief that anything could extinguish our existence, can take from us what was meant to be ours, when we understand that the same way we have the experience of forming in a womb and then forming in a world, like when we're able to sublimate the experience of this life into a broader, bigger picture, that is the job of mystics, that is the job of spirituality, that is the point of a deity field 8th dimension. That is our whole work that we do as the part of the whole that like moves things from a place of meaninglessness into a place of meaning. We're a part of the body that is like the synapses in the mind doing different things. And so, you know, when we think about like when we're able to sort of participate in a much bigger vision, yes, that's what all religions do. And they all fall short because they're all selling a story about redemption based on your obedience, which makes you believe that somebody deserves something and somebody doesn't deserve something, and you have to compare in order to figure out where you are or who you are or be safe. It's not fair. They're not fair. What is the value of a lifespan of somebody who's 106 versus the value of a lifespan that is 6 days? Is one lifespan more significant than the other? Is one lifespan more beautiful than the other? Is one lifespan more than the other? Is one life form more than the other? When we begin to compare and cast judgment, the life of the infant, the 6-day-old, was no life at all. And the life of the 106-year-old, that was the blessing of all blessings. That's not true. Outside of a place of time and space, that's not true at all in any way, shape, or form. because there's a lot that can be done with a lifespan, and there's a lot that a lifespan represents. And depending on where you want to experience your eternity on the spectrum between poles, if you want to be in that bright light, never separated from the love and holiness of God, you want a short lifespan. Or no lifespan at all. So we don't really have when we step into the place of the judge, when we step into the place of the accuser, we begin to agitate the wound. We begin to participate in a spreading of the sickness. We begin to participate in the fissure, like even more, and so with this faith in the process, and the Two of Wands and the Page of Swords, that Page of Swords is the message, the meaning, the messenger. The faith in the process is, this is not all that I am. This life is not all that I have been given. And the life that I have been given is for a purpose that I don't understand any more than I understood the life that I was given in the womb was for a purpose that I didn't understand. That's this faith in the process. That sublimation makes it possible for you to begin to bring back balance into the equation of your experience of good and evil. Because if evil's just eating you, and all you can do is touch the wound, react to the wound with anger and point and blame, because pointing and blaming is the only thing that makes us feel like we have some control over this notion of there's no such thing as deserve. We have no control over that. It's not based on behavior. It's not based on obedience. That authentic you moving through the story that you're stuck with one way or another is all you've got. And that communication with what it means to move through that circumstance and move through that story and bring meaning through it. You're emancipating the story and everybody who's trapped into it when you're able to bring that meaning to that space of the void in the underworld. What do you think Hecate does? That's why she's so cool. And with that self-soothing, that's kind of what we're talking about. Because we scream out in pain and then we get angry and violent. And of course, pain makes us angry and violent. And guess what? Terror, repressed, expresses as rage. It can't be avoided. And rage is not a free will sort of experience. And that's dangerous. And that's something there. And so when we begin to think about what it means to heal ourselves and heal the world, the diagnostic process is the void expanding if we don't bring healing. And the diagnostic process cannot be a healing endeavor when we have vengeance mixed in. Because even if you think about those criminals in Gitmo, Guantanamo Bay, torture is torture. Once you participate in torture and you see and touch it and you touch the void and you know that that exists and you participate in it, that void is now in your body and you walk around with it and you are never escaping it. So those that participate in torture have the same spiritual outcome as those who are being tortured every single time. The only difference is the person that is having to experience the assault is not already consumed by the void. It is touching the void. It is feeling the void. It is being hit by the void. It is encountering the void. To be a victim is to encounter the void. To be a perpetrator is to have lost yourself to the void. You no longer exist anymore. You are just the void. That's the difference between victim and perpetrator. And this is a spectrum. This is a spectrum. When you're willing to be cruel, when you're just willing to participate in any level of cruelty. And what I mean by cruelty, when you're willing to make fun of somebody who's hurting, anyone, anywhere, for any reason, and make a joke about it. Prison isn't, what is it? Prison isn't camp or something like that. Whatever the joke is, right? The joke might be applied broadly, you know what I mean? A little bit of sense, savoring the vengeance of those who have done things that they're already the void. The perpetrators that are in a place like Gitmo are already the void. They've been the void. they're not feeling the pain. They're not feeling even the punishment. They're actually enjoying that environment. They're around a larger void than just it's like there can be the void can expand, and they're at a party that is the void, right? And so a place like that, when you put somebody in a place like that, and you know that human fallibility says that there's no 100% like certainty record with a system that is a disaster. Who are these people in paperwork shuffling things around, right? When we're willing to participate in torturing somebody who's already the void, that's just expanding the void. Like, I keep on losing this because it's so ugly. Oh my God, I don't want to look at that. To participate in torture is to eat the void and consume the void and be a part of the void, much more than it is to have it inflicted upon you. And so inflicting torture on a bad guy only makes you have to hold the void. The bad guy was already holding the void. It's not justice. Vengeance doesn't bring justice. It expands the void every single time. So we can get angry. We should get angry. We have to get angry. It's important to get angry. Anger is the only substance that'll get you through terror and fear. That's why terror repressed expresses it as rage, because it's the only thing that's going to get you out of a terrified state is anger. And so, when we recognize that like anger is an important thing to experience and express, and it's something we take with us into our encounters with the void. But when we are just angry and accusing, that's sort of like where we're on the injustice shadow side of this equation. And so now let's look at the healing. I mean, this is going to be I think probably the longest reading. I mean, I'm gonna put these readings up, and I'm just not gonna. The Seven of Pentacles, and the Five of Wands, and the Three of Wands, and the World. All right, so here's where we're entering the new chapter, and we're going to kind of begin to wrap this into a place where we can work with it. Empathy is, when you have no empathy, you have been consumed by the void. There's no you. There's just you, and like no empathy is, it's mostly the void. And you know that if you're not experiencing empathy for anyone. Now, when I sat down for the first time with this reading, and I saw that I'm on the injustice side of the shadow of the God of justice, it was because I have, in my own focus on my own suffering and my own comparison and looking at other people and thinking to myself, that one's like, that, that's not real suffering. That's not real suffering. That's not real suffering. That's real suffering. Who am I? What am I doing? Why would I judge somebody else's suffering? Why would I judge my suffering as significant and valid and invalidate their suffering? What would that be? That's trying to get some control over the encounter with the void. So we have to be honest with ourselves. We got to look at this stuff. How much empathy, how much compassion do you feel and express? And it's not even just how much compassion do you express. How much compassion do you physically feel? That's how much you experience the other as divine. That's how much divine you see in the other, which is how much divine you believe is in yourself as well. And so when we bring this balance in, it's work. There's real work here, because we have to stop comparing. We have to throw comparison out the window. We have to employ judgment. What does judgment do? It makes sure that we are not on the spectrum of good and evil somewhere in the process of building the void within ourselves and building the void within others, and dehumanizing the people around us. We dehumanize the people around us by comparison. It is not you are enlightened and they are stupid, idiot, evil people who are hurting others. That's not what it is. I'm going to tell you what it is. I want to sit with you. I'm going to take your hand while I say this. It is not you are enlightened and that person is dog shit stupid and choosing to be dog shit stupid. It's the version of you from 20 years ago and the version of you now. That person who is dog shit stupid is the version of you 20 years ago. You are not better than that person. You are in a different place in time, which outside of time is a different place in development. And a different place in development, I want you to think about this, is not better or worse. In a sense, it's better because with that enlightenment and that expansion, you get stronger, you get brighter, and you bring brightness to the experience of the world, and you're part of the expansion of that brightness. But you are not more or less worthy of love and care and empathy 20 years ago or now. That's participating in justice. Not injustice, but participating in space. Justice is bringing that perspective to your enemy. You're just me in a different phase of development. And you're worthy of love. And you're worthy of compassion. You might need to be reformed. You might be dangerously close to being consumed by the void. You might feel like you have no control over that void. And you might be grasping for control by yielding more void. You know, people in panic positions do horrible things. And people who are consumed by the void, like, do actively spread it. And so, like, there's a difference between understanding that injustice is something that you're participating with or you're not. Justice is something that you're participating with or you're not. And where you fall on that can be measured in relationship to your felt empathy. The authentic you, communication and self-soothing, like what it means for you to see the suffering of others as your own suffering. There's no other way of looking at it. And blame is problematic because there's no such thing as deserving. To whom nothing is given, nothing is expected. I expect the person who was born chained to a basement and never given language and somebody threw them bread, I don't expect much from that person. When it comes to moral codes and an ability to navigate those things. I expect something that needs a lot of healing and attention and love, not something that deserves more punishment because it's carrying the void. Because it's not about deserve. And so when we're able to really examine the importance of bringing justice to the world is the importance of doing the work that, like, sets you free from the judgment and from being the judge, and then operating with discernment. Discernment is judgment, like, done right. And, like, the discernment is, you see the situation, you figure it out, you form a strategy that allows you to bring healing to that situation, even if healing to that situation means separating the void from the people that the void wants to devour. But when you separate the void from the people that the void wants to devour, there's still some aspect of this that says, by consensus, whatever it means to separate the void is to try and heal it, even in its separation. Because its existence, that criminal's existence, is the presence of the void. If there's no way to bring that person out of the void, and there's no way to bring that person out of the void unless you're able to throw them that rope, and that rope is called meaning, and that rope called meaning is never vengeance. It's always, how do we get you back? And what if we don't want to? What if we want vengeance? Well, the problem with wanting vengeance is that when vengeance exists, it exists for everybody, and there's no such thing as deserve. So what does that mean? So So what it means for us to participate in bringing balance is knowing that when we discern injustice, we have to say, I discern imbalance. Not, I discern kill that evil person and bring vengeance, and I am the white knight. We are in the hero of, there is imbalance. That is imbalance. That is an imbalance of shadow and light. And how do we bring light to the situation? Bringing light to the situation is the opposite of vengeance in every single way. And knowing this and trying to work with it are two different things. But with leadership here, this is like hard work. Getting out of the habit of accusing when you're scared is really hard, because it's one of the only things that helps with the fear is that I'm diagnosing. Because that's part of strategy. But when it's discernment and you're able to say, I see an imbalance, I can understand that the presence of an imbalance in that direction of shadow is something that I will keep my distance from, because I don't want to touch it and I don't want it to touch me. That's smart. But if it's somebody that you love, who is in a tragedy, who is encountering a sickness, who is encountering some kind of a violent act, and you can't go near them because you don't want to touch the void, that's the problem. That's where we make that wound bigger, and we ensure that victim is much more likely to get eaten by the void than not eaten by the void. And we've all had the experience of being the victim and expecting people to react in a certain kind of way, and instead they put on a fake show of support, but then run 1,000 miles away because they don't know the right thing to say. And they don't understand how that happened, and they don't know what to do, and they can't look at you like this now because they're going to always look at you different, and they have to be careful about what they say about certain things around you now, and that makes them distant too. And there's all these distancing tactics because of this fear of the void, whether the void is a friend that has gotten sick, or the void is a criminal that is a different kind of sick. We have to be able to look at it in one. Because if we can't look at it in one, we have to look at it. We have to look at the void. And if we can't look at the void, we can't look at it in the victim any more than we can look at it in the perpetrator. That is the truth. If you can't look at the void and you're just in an avoidance pattern of everything good happens to good people, and I can behave and I can comply and I can obedience my way to an insurance policy that says I'm going to have only a good experience, those are the people who really end up grounded in purgatory, needing help when they die, right? Because they haven't gone through anything. They haven't achieved any level of spiritual maturation, because spiritual maturation and expansion and growth of the soul comes from encounters with the void, incurring that wound. The wound is the void in the body, and then bringing that healing, bringing that meaning, creating that bridge, lessening the wound for yourself, lessening the wound for everybody. And so when we think about leadership and flow and the processes that we're in when it comes to confronting the angel of justice, we need a philosophy on what's good, what's beautiful, what's right, what's glorious, what's an opportunity about all this suffering. Why am I going through this terrible, awful, no good, awful, this new chapter, this new cycle coming in? There is something to this notion of heaven and hell. There is absolutely something to this notion of heaven and hell. And what there is to this notion of heaven and hell is that we're in a circle. And at the most powerful, in the cycles, in the circle that we're in, as we expand out, as we move between shadow and light, we gain mastery, we expand, we become wise. I don't know what eventually happens between those two poles, but I do know that there are times when, part of what it means to be in a cycle and in an expansion is that, if you think about the spiral as starting in the middle of darkness and moving out into lighter and brighter and lighter and brighter and lighter and brighter, as it goes out, it touches the light, as it moves in, it's the black hole, the infinity goes in both directions, right? So the center is the black hole, and as it moves out, we're touching the rings, the far reaches, which is a type of light. And that spectrum between is the growth that's constantly happening of the whole. So if we're able to I just saw this vision and I have to like now find my center because it was really cool and I lost myself. Let's see. This is like one of the hardest energies I can kind of go near. Look at this woman in prayer here. They're helpless, they're naked, they're in a dark, small space. The only presence that they can feel with them is a small bird. And they're being called to have faith in this process. They're going somewhere. They're in a tiny little wagon in the dark, and that wagon is called faith, and it's bringing them somewhere. But the only thing that they can feel is this presence here and this presence here, and it's complete darkness, and they don't know where they're going. And that faith, this wagon of faith, is that there's somebody pulling it. And so when we think about what it means to find ourselves in the void or encountering the void with a wound, the next thing that you do when you find yourself in the void and you find yourself touching the wound and starting to accuse everyone around you because it's the only way to gain some level of power, diagnose. Discernment is useful for strategy and making notes, but if you're feeling powerless and angry with it, that's not the same. This is the important thing to know about the void. When you find yourself in the void, there's something bigger than you that is consuming your life or has consumed your life, or you've experienced this encounter with something that could swallow you whole, and you've seen the eyes of evil, and now you are hiding as much as humanly possible and trying to keep a lid on it, because every time you go near that pain of that encounter, there's rage. So when you find yourself in the void, or you find yourself not being able to like get out of the void, because this is a point of prayer. Step 1, start praying. Step 2, belief is permission. Step 3, somebody is pulling this cart. I want you to like listen really, really closely, because this is really important information. If you find yourself in the void, if you're talking to somebody in the void, step 1 is pray. Step 2 is belief is permission. That prayer, you step into belief. Step 3, you believe somebody is pulling you out. That's how it happens. That's how the pullout begins. And that belief will increment by increment by increment pull you out of the void, because what you're doing is you're investing energy into, I'm being helped, I'm being assisted, I'm gonna make it through this, I'm getting through this, this is gonna be overcome, this is not all that there is, there's another side to this, there is help, there are guides, I am moving through this, I am getting to the other side of it. All of that is being transferred into an energy that pulls the wagon. Its belief is permission and pulls the wagon. And so once you have been through the process of being pulled out of the void, now you know how to do it. Now you know how to do it. You can tell somebody else. Now you can go into the void, skipping and dancing. You know how to get out of there. You know how to go. You did it before. That void doesn't, that is justice. True justice is a relationship with injustice that says, I know how you work. I know who you are. And you are not overpowerful, and you are not going to overpower me, because I know the movement. I know the dance move. And that's really what this, leadership and opportunity and flow, with that knowledge, you can lead. Each one of these wounds is an opportunity to fight against it, to hide from it, to touch it and run away. This is all understandable. But participating with injustice is any level of participating with an imbalance of power, so levels of supremacy that go all the way to torture start with a smug little remark where you're like making fun of somebody who never did anything bad and who already is struggling in one way or another. It's that little, because it's the same experience, it's the same demon, it's the same energy. You're holding it either just in your hand and then you're dropping it, or you're eating the whole thing and becoming it, And so what this flow is really talking about is you know, in terms of the wisdom on the bottom of the deck, you know, you are the bringer of the wisdom. You are the bringer of the divine. You are the bringer of the deliverance. You are the bringer of meaning. Wisdom comes from the experience of facing down and confronting the angel of injustice over and over and over and over and again, and sublimating its power to the higher power that is the wisdom that you can bring to anything and transform it. And that's the balance, and you are the balance bringer. This is what this is telling us. And so with the world here being about a new chapter starting, and with that Seven of Pentacles being about the work that goes into this experience, you know, moving towards that leadership, the self-soothing that has to happen here, you know, in terms of like this Three of Wands, there is an expectation that there is more. There's an expectation that what you are working on in the way of your lifespan and the alchemy that you are creating with the you that you are going to become and the placement that you're going to find yourself with those rings that go round and round, you're going to eventually place all the way out there, but you can also screw yourself and you can go backwards. You know what I mean? You can get stuck going round and round and round and round and round and round through suffering, refusing to learn these lessons, inflicting them on everybody that you meet, because the responsibility of your pain and suffering is outside of yourself. That's the trap of the void, because the void is outside of yourself. And for a moment, for a day, for an hour, for a decade, it was able to hold you captive. But you were able to overcome it. And in overcoming it, you have defeated it. And that is not a victory of like fairness. That if anything, it's a victory of enlightenment, which is not a struggle with somebody else. And it's not a struggle with the person who wronged you, or the system that wronged you, or the situation that wronged you, or the story that you feel traps you, and the story giver that is whatever gave you life. Like, I mean, these are, you know, difficult things, but when we sit in an expectation that says, you know, with every opportunity there's an expansion, and that expansion moves me more towards a place of leadership in the whole, I'm placing myself with the life that I lead, not based on the achievements that I get, but the person who I am. And the person who I am does something really amazing with a story of grape. The person that I am does something really amazing with the story of sickness. The person I am does something really amazing with the story of captivity. And the healing that is brought is that of sublimation. And that sublimation happens because you believe in a force of nature that loves you, that created you, that chose your consciousness to exist forever, because that is a movement of creation that is a love. You don't love something like, no, that's not even it. Our guys are saying it's like they're showing me something that when I stumble to it, it's because I have a wound. The forces that create new consciousness and bring it into the world with a certain package and a certain story and all of the all the accompaniments of the divine energies of our ancestors that are traits that are refining and through us and with us, and those are our guides, and also the deities that are also refining us as the stories that accompany us through our lives, whether we like it or not. We're going to be on the shadow or light of whatever story is there. When you realize that the ecosystem that created you forever. Once you exist, you never unexist. And created you forever within a space that is a closed space. Do you know how much somebody has to love something to create an infinite thing that is going to share an intimate space forever with it? Go and Google how many sperm there are that are racing towards the egg and what the chances for your life existing even is. And you're going to find out that the chances of you even existing in the first place are infinitesimal, teeny tiny. You won the lottery. It's like winning a lottery. Now, when you consider that what it means to win the lottery in existence is to be loved so much that you are chosen for this purpose of being a companion with the creating force, then you know how loved you are, and whatever stories were imposed upon you aren't there as punishment, because that pain and suffering was no more punishment than the pain and suffering of moving through the birth canal. Equal pain and suffering in both of those experiences. And we're not meant to always be suffering. Once we gain this command over the void and we're able to not be consumed by it, but rather bring meaning to it and diminish it in our and the environments that we interact with when we see it, we become one of these agents. It's like the white blood cell that is like the healing agent that has the discernment to know what is health and what is an arrogant cell trying to, take over, like there's this way in which we can think about these things. And our guides are saying that this sublimation process and really getting it right is the most powerful thing in the world, because it's the wagon of faith that pulls us out of the void and that we can go back in and pull others out of the void with too. It's a formula. You're not the savior. You just come in with the wisdom because you've been there. And that places you in leadership, all right? And so there's a lot to that. And I think I'm going to leave it there because this is really, really long. But, there are 2 readings that I'm going to put, and I'm going to let them, instead of making them just 1 week, because it's a lot that's come through. Even the reading that was like the back in time reading that I found is kind of related to this oddly as well, in terms of what it means to manage the inflictions of the universe and nature. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do confronting the angel of justice and transforming it into emancipation, or something like that, and confronting the angel of justice and being consumed by the void. These are actually going to be 2 parts of like the same lesson, I think. And I think I actually will put them like I'll do this week, and next week's enrichment is going to be like this work. So, okay, we're going to leave it there. I'm sending you all love and encouragement, and I hope that you are all doing well. And I'm so grateful for you, and I'll see you again soon.